Hello and welcome and thank you for joining me. I am Robert Ouellette and I am going to talk about Buddha here.
Your Inner Being channel.
For me, this is where a lot of my journey began. There was a time where when I started my path, I came across some of the teachings of the Buddha and I started to be inspired. And what's so inspiring about him? Well, there's two things that are mainly inspiring. One is his story, his life, and his journey. And then the other is the practices and teachings that he gave. So he went through quite an ordeal in his life to come to the realizations that he did. And that's really where he gets a lot of credit, is the realizations of things. The things that he practiced, the things that he taught his disciples and taught the world are things that are true. He is quite just presenting the world as it is. And when he does so, he is pretty much presenting a path that's going to lead to suffering and a path that is going to lead to peace, happiness, or enlightenment. His points of view is not a religion. These are just ways to live. And you'll see what I mean. I'm going to start with his story. You see, he was born in a kingdom. He was born with all the things that anyone could ever want or dream of having. We dream of living the rich life, and he had it. He had all the things that money could buy. He had all the good quality clothing and anything that he wanted. He was presented with girls, women. He was presented with drinking, all those other lavish party, fun feeling things with his friends. Man, it was groovy. It was a time of rock and roll. He had everything that he wanted because his father wanted to persuade him to stay there, stay in the kingdom, live that kind of life. He had so many temptations, and he found that there was something wrong with that. He did find that eventually it was causing him some pain. It was causing him pain in his life as it would anyone else who indulges in that kind of behavior. At the same time, he was noticing on the outside world that the world was also in pain. There was diseases, especially in that time. People were getting sick and people were dying. People were living in misery. And he wanted to escape his kingdom because of all the distractions that were there. So he wanted to set out and discover for himself a way to save himself from that pain and suffering. He left the riches, everything, his family, his friends, and he left them behind. By himself, he walked out into the regions and he would go from one guru to another. He went from one teacher to another and listening to their teachings and their practices. A lot of the gurus were teaching ways to suffer in order to become stronger in life. There was this idea that the more suffering you caused within you, the stronger and more resilient you were. In a way, we find that true today, right? We find that when life is so hard on us, and we're sticking with it, and we're dragging our feet through the mud, and we are just putting up with a whole lot of crap, and the things that we have to go through, and we suffer, and we suffer, and we suffer. We go through the fear, the anxieties, the pain. But on the other end, when we're through it all, we come out stronger, more resilient, because of the skills that we learned when we were in that position. So there is some truth to it. This particular practice that he went through almost killed him. He had fasted. He didn't eat for so long that his body withered to almost nothing. He was skin and bone. He was really at the last breaths. He was going to die. He was going to die. He knew that. He's now with all these teachers and all these gurus who are smart and inspiring to him, but yet there was still something wrong with it all. He decided to just leave all that again. He left the teachers. He left the other friends, his students, and he went on his own, and he sat underneath a tree, a Bodhi tree. It doesn't really matter what kind of tree, but he sat underneath that tree, and then he did his own mindfulness. He meditated on it. He came to so many realizations, and he found a way to eliminate the suffering in people's lives. And he presented it in what he calls the Four Noble Truths. 1, there is suffering. There is inevitable suffering. And that is both through your behaviors and through just the nature of life. In this case, he is specifically speaking of your behavior, which is the second noble truth, is that the source of the suffering is through the behaviors such as greed, ignorance, and hatred. Anything along those lines are going to lead you to a path of suffering. The third noble truth is that there is a way of eliminating the suffering due to your behavior. The fourth is that way. That fourth noble truth is what he calls the Eightfold Path, a guideline to which you can live and practice only 8 things, and you can lead yourself down a path of happiness, peace, and enlightenment. You could do this. You could do this. I can do this. You can follow this no matter what faith you believe in, if you even believe in a faith, no matter what it is that you have going on in your life. The path that is set out is not an ideology. It's not do this because I want you to live the way I want you to live. Believe me because I'm telling you this. It's open. It's an open-minded view where you can look at all of the points and say, yeah, I can see how this is going to help my life. You can clearly see it. You can hear his teachings and say to yourself, the dude is right. I either am going to take his advice and I can see how that's going to help me, or you could say, I can see how if I ignore that, I can see how that's going to lead to my suffering. And am I going to get tempted? Am I going to ignore that? You take responsibility knowing what your actions were, and that you weren't fooled into anything. You made that choice for yourself. Anyhow, stick with me. The next discussion is going to be on the Eightfold Path. And you can see how that's going to inspire you to lead to happiness. If you want happiness and peace, maybe enlightenment, then give it a try. Join me on my next discussion, the Eightfold Path, and until next time, take care, and I wish you well.
Thank you for watching.